Hey everybody, this is Steve with Brutal Resonance, and today I have Keith from Mechanical Vein. Keith, how you doing?
Doing good. How are
Good.
you?
I mean, I got the blurred background going on. I'm trying to decide if I like it or not, so I'm staring at myself more than you right now. So,
Are you feeling self-conscious without all of your toys to
yeah,
add to the vibe?
like I kind of behind me. I'm not sure if you've seen it on social media, but I started like a little wall of like industrial posters and whatnot, and like signed vinyl
Mhm.
that I have, and so I kind of was trying to use that as a background, but like I also have sometimes a mess on the floor and stuff like that, so I kind of try to blur it out. And I'm just like, I don't know if I like it or not, but I mean, at least my
Yeah,
hair's okay, It got all of that,
yeah.
so
Focusing on that instead of the dirty laundry.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Or like the dog toys or anything else that could be possibly seen on the floor.
yeah.
Now, I am looking at your background there, and I do see a sign that says Industrial Street.
Yes. Yeah, it's my wife and I saw it. We live in London now. We're from the US
Uh huh.
originally. I think we saw it at some random shop near where we live
Uh huh.
and had to have it. We didn't steal it from Industrial Street. I don't know where that street actually is, but
Yeah.
yeah,
We
we
actually have.
couldn't say
There's
no to that.
Yeah, like every single time I pass like a warehouse zone, I actually work at a warehouse, but like the bigger industrial sites and the bigger warehouse sites, there's always an industrial street, industrial avenue, or something like that over there. And I'm always like driving with my wife, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna pull over and get a picture with that sign because it'd be funny and cool. And she's just like, no, you're not. We're gonna go and we're gonna keep going. And I'm like, oh, she doesn't allow me to do it.
Someday,
Someday,
someday it'll
one of
happen.
these days, I'll do it. But who knows when that'll be. Keith, obviously everybody knows you for Mechanical Vein, but what shocked me was I remember when I was looking for the little a little short intro for the channel. I remember you posted on my status that I made that you can do it and that you worked on a bunch of films like Matrix and other stuff. Tell us about your job. What do you do aside from
Yeah.
making industrial bass?
I mean, as is probably the case for most artists, like the music doesn't pay the rent,
Yeah.
especially the London rent. So yeah, my main job is in visual effects. Been doing it for like 15 years,
Hmm.
mostly in films, from like animated films like the Ice Ages up through the recent like Matrix and Fast and Furious and
Hmm.
Pacific Rim 2 and lots of those things. Just a few months ago, I shifted to a place that does more advertisements and uh, some game trailers and music videos and such. Um, so it's less film work at the moment, but it's actually not any less creative. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's been doing VFX for quite a while. Occasionally do it for music related projects as well. And it's nice to kind of have both of those skills. And um, you have to be careful to not try to do everything yourself
Yeah.
when you do music things because it's just, yeah, trying to be a one-man army can, it can be a lot of work for one person to bite off, but it is nice to be able to like, fully realize, like the visual and audio side of a project.
Yeah. So what got you into that line of work? Was it like when you were a kid you saw Jurassic Park and you're like, holy shit, I want to make a 3D dinosaur?
It's, yeah, I mean, like Jurassic Park and Star Wars and all that's very
Yeah.
legendary, inspiring stuff.
Hmm.
I started out doing like computer science, and a friend of mine was doing video editing, and almost like switched to just doing that stuff, but still wanted some like marketable skills, and
Hmm.
wound up doing both things, and yeah, just found myself like in New York City starting with commercial work and then doing film work, and um, yeah, it's like a nice combination of um, techie and artsy skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite VFX in a film?
Uh, in any film, it's really hard to say.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
like
it's
I'm personally not too picky when it comes to that stuff. Because like I one time saw it described as all VFX is gonna look like VFX for the most part. So it's kind of hard to tell the difference. But then I watched a behind the scenes look at like Fury Road because I really got into that film, and I was looking at all that, and a lot of it was practical, but then they showed what they actually
mhm.
added into the film as well through VFX, and I was shocked that that stuff wasn't real.
Yeah, that's just the thing because VFX stuff gets a bad rep for,
Hmm.
just being like cheesy, obviously CG
Yeah.
um, things, and you don't know half the time that you're looking at VFX stuff. Like you might think like, oh, period piece is not so VFX heavy, but it's actually like incredibly VFX heavy
Hmm.
stuff to just create an immersive, you know, different time period. And yeah, it's only the bad stuff that people, vilify and etc. And obviously I'm biased, but yeah, there's lots of CG that's amazing that you would never even particularly notice.
Yeah.
But yeah, favorite VFX stuff. It's funny because like working at the big studios, oftentimes you'll largely work on like the big blockbusters, which are the more obvious
Hmm.
um, explosions and things. But I think just in terms of like favorite films, like not just visuals or whatever, but two of them that I like the most, probably like Here for Wellness is quite cool,
Hmm.
kind of like a spooky, like creepy one, psychological thriller stuff. Just and Life, kind of interesting, like alien sci-fi movie. And those are pretty cool, just because they're just like a. It's not just your standard superhero explosions
Yeah.
and whatnot. It's kind of
Was
like
Life the
interesting
yeah was Life the
artistic
yeah
films.
was Life the movie that was part of the Cloverfield universe or no?
No,
Okay.
I did see some theories that like on the internet where people were wondering if it could be like a prequel to Venom or like a different
Yeah.
Venom origin thing, which, um, unless there's some deep secrets I'm not aware of, it's not. But I did love that theory,
Yeah.
because that would be very cool. But
Yeah.
no, as far as I know, it's a standalone thing, which is actually nice because it's nice having something that's not a sequel of a sequel, you
Yeah.
know?
Just to have something stand alone and just be spooky on
Yeah,
its own. Just because it's like a black icky creature that like morphs onto people doesn't mean that it has to be Venom.
yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, no, I've always appreciated VFX, but a lot of people have always said that like when VFX is there, I don't mind if it's you know on the shittier side or really well done, like an Avatar. And the reason being is because no matter what way you look at it, most times, like especially for a VFX creature, it's gonna look fake no matter what. We're not at that level of technology where you look at a creature and all of a sudden it's just like, no, that's real. It's not. It doesn't look like that yet. There's always that to me. There's always that shiny sheen on a VFX creature.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, not always, but yeah, it can be pretty obvious, and it's hard to make something that's can't exist look realistic.
Exactly, but at
Yeah.
the same time, like I love it too because I mean, like I forget the creature's name, but that was it the Balrog from Lord of the Rings. We're going way back here, like 20 years ago. But that thing is one of the best creatures
Mhm.
designs I've seen in movies by far. And that thing is like what 20 years old now or something like that, and it still looks great to
Yeah.
this day. Badass. So, um, now in comparison to the CGI that you love, what is your favorite film of all time, in general, without the VFX? Or if you could give me like a
Um,
top three.
but it's funny because like I almost feel self-conscious about it,
Mm-hmm.
because like it's one of those '90s films that if it was made today not uh, would not fly.
Okay.
Probably get canceled quick.
Uh huh.
But ever since I was a kid, I always loved Boondock Saints. Just
Yeah, I like that one
good,
too.
yeah, good vigilante, justice. I've always been kind of a sucker for that vigilante anti-hero kind of thing. Um, and of course, it's like young metalhead,
Yeah.
budding goth guy. I always loved Blade, of course. That's kind of a classic.
Yeah, absolutely. With
Um,
the Blood
can't
Rave and
go
all
wrong.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's. I
Can't go
wonder
wrong
how
with that.
many goths the Blood Rave has spawned in its
Yeah.
own.
I want to know
But
how many went wrong because of that film.
yeah, that's also yes,
So,
also a valid question.
yeah, no, I've always appreciated those types of films, like the cheesy action stuff, because it's like Boondock Saints, hysterical, still cheesy here and there. Blade,
Yeah.
trying to be serious, but absolutely cheesy all the way through. But like, I still can get down with like even like going back to I think it was released in the early '80s, like The Warriors. You remember that film?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I
yeah.
love that one. I can watch that any day of the week. I
Mhm.
had my wife watch it like twice with me, and the last time we watched it together, she said she would give it like a 3 out of 10 because it sucks so bad. And I was like, man, I love this film.
Oh,
So
come on. I guess I'm almost afraid to watch some of the films I loved,
yeah,
back in the day, just in case they don't hold up. But
hmm
I'd like to think that's enough of a classic that
Yeah,
you know,
I would say it does and it
lives to
doesn't
it.
hold up. Like it's so bad it's good in a sense, you know. Like
Yeah.
there's still good punch here and there, but choreography isn't great. But the story itself is awesome, and so are the like visual aesthetics and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I do feel lucky in that I'm pretty easily entertained.
yeah,
Like I don't need something to be an absolute, profound cinematic masterpiece in order to entertain me for a couple hours. So,
yeah. I guess I'm kind of like half and half on it because it's like I wouldn't say I have a high degree of where something needs to be at for me to enjoy it, but at the same time I'm very picky with what I watch, so it's like a double-edged sword with me, you know. So,
yeah.
like my go-to films, like my comfort films, you could call them that, are like Casino, for example, with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. Like I love that movie. I've
Mhm.
been watching it since I was a kid, which a lot of people say I shouldn't have, but I mean I loved it anyway. So,
Yeah.
but all right, moving on from film, let's talk about a little bit of Mechanical Vein here. You moved from the U.S. to the U.K. In 2016. You told me about that a little bit. Was that in part to further your musical career, or was that more of just like a life decision that you made personally?
It's a little bit of it- primarily a life decision. Now,
Mm-hmm.
for Americans, it's very exciting to be able to live over abroad in the UK. I feel like most people tend to be biased against wherever they're from. Like a lot of people here would be so excited to like live in the US for a bit. For Americans, it's exciting to be here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a hot spot for visual effects work, and I was wrapping up a couple projects and could have probably stayed in the New York area, maybe gone back to California, but the London opportunity popped up, and it's hard to say no to that.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we've been here for 7 years and have no intentions to go back. We, really dig the UK, and proximity to the rest of Europe and everything is awesome as well.
Yeah.
Um, I just played a Helsinki Industrial Festival last November, and
Where does that take
did
place? In Finland, I believe, right?
yep, yeah,
Yeah.
that's Finland. And honestly, it's like it was a 30 euro or 30 pound flight to get there or something. It's like,
That's it. That'd be
I
nice.
know. So and for Americans, that's
It's
it's
nothing.
such a huge luxury. It's nothing, yeah.
Yeah, because
Like
me, we just booked a vacation for. We live in Pennsylvania. We just booked a vacation in January, so we could go down to Florida and meet some family and also do other things. But that cost us still like 500, $600, and that's cheap.
yeah.
you know. Now I'm
Yeah.
jealous. So, um, you've been doing a lot with Mechanical Vein throughout the whole entire year. We're just going to start off with the big one. You have your new album out, your debut album, actually, which I couldn't believe. I didn't think that, like, you've been around for so long. I thought you had an album out already, but apparently not. But The Storm You Can't Contain. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's funny because I've had the similar thought for other artists that will be headlining big festivals, even
Yeah.
like not just scene festivals, like big EDM festivals. You'll see, um, might have been like Dimension, is like a massive drum and bass guy. I think the last one might have been called his debut album, even though he's been like one of the big artists in that scene for ages. He just hadn't released a full album for a
Yeah.
long time. Um, so it seems like the norm is even if you've had some singles out and maybe an EP, that your first full length album you can still call a debut, uh, a debut LP. But yeah, it's been a lot of work going into that, and a handful of years leading up into that, and there are a lot of collaborators on it. It's a 10-track album with 9 collaborators. Uh, some of them proper collabs, some just vocal features. I just like working with people.
Mhm.
It's it can be like isolating just being an electronic music dude just kind of whiling away in your studio on your own for endless amounts of time. And you know part of why I love the music scene and doing music stuff is just the community vibe of that, and doing collabs just part of that, I suppose. But yeah, it's largely kind of drum and bass tempo, with industrial drum and bass essentially, with a few other things. We've got you know, like a 160 BPM industrial bass banger with Morris Black as well. Got some you know, slower mid-tempo cyberpunk vibes.
Mhm.
Feel your noise, but most of it kind of centers around that drum and bass with metal influences
Yeah.
kind of vibe.
Do you have a an overall theme to this album, or is this just like a collection of like tracks that you melted together? Because I know some artists go in to an album and they want to focus on one theme, one story, while others do like a collection of singles that are individual in their own purpose.
Yeah, because there's kind of a lot of tracks that came together over decent amount of time. It's somewhat a random collection, but they do all kind of have a cohesive theme. It's very loose theme. A lot of it just thinking about how humanity's wired, how people are wired, whether it's how they respond in like bigger socio-political ways to things, breakdown of society, etc. Or it could there's some tracks that are much more personal, like um, more like human connection, like intimate themes, or maybe manipulation themes for some of them. So it's just various degrees of how people are wired, and you know, in various different contexts. Which is a very like hazy theme, but
Yeah,
I guess almost anything could fall under that, right?
yeah,
It's
it's a
hardly even a theme.
yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like you're focusing on, as you said, human interaction more than anything. You know,
Yeah. Try to
and
like keep a very personal vibe to a lot of the tunes.
gotcha. So,
Yeah.
are in that sense, then, if you're keeping it personal, are you kind of exploring how you interact personally with other people, other like social events, world events, and stuff like that, politics in general?
Um, I suppose to a degree, like, um, do try to like think about, my interactions with things from the outside to kind of like, um, yeah, try to like make sense of it and see how much of our responses to things are sort of like programmed responses we don't think about versus, you know,
Put it.
actually putting thought into how we respond to things. Um, but yeah, like a lot of the personal vibe is sort of like has been a little bit of a conflict branding wise because Mechanical Vein sounds kind of very like cyberpunk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've always been a lot of my favorite artists have been very sort of like very openly personal artists, like very inspired by a lot of indie hip hop, like Sage Francis, B. Dolan, and kind of appreciate the sort of like personal
Mm-hmm.
connection of those kinds of tunes, and didn't want to like lose that in this sort of industrial cyberpunk type of
Yeah.
you know presentation. So
Well, I also think that kind of goes against what most cyberpunk industrial albums go for, because a lot of the cyberpunk industrial albums that I've listened to always go for the same theme of like, corporations suck, governments suck, and all this other crap, and they always forget to leave in that personal touch, as you said. They always just go for like the big picture. And
yeah,
I don't feel as if a lot of like cyberpunk and industrial artists in that field kind of go for the what you're saying is the more human emotion. Like, what are you personally feeling? How can you reach your audience?
yeah, that's yeah, it's really like been the big conscious focus of how to present things.
Yeah,
Even as far as like I put myself on the album cover and in a sort of visual effects, you know,
yeah,
stylized 3D rendered form, but just to have it not be sort of faceless, like cyberpunky industrial bangers, just
yeah,
try to actually like put a human face to it.
yeah. Because I know a lot of people that do this type of stuff. They also do the pseudonym sort of personality where it's just like, oh, I'm a robot from the future, or I am an
Yeah.
AI, and as fun as that can be, it's also extremely cheesy and sometimes takes a little bit of the drama out of a musical project for me. So, but it is what it is. Everybody has their own thing.
Hmm.
So you also dropped a collaboration with Zardonic, which is,
Yep.
I think that's kind of big because I remember I featured Zardonic a while back on Brutal, and that was actually one of the more popular articles we did because Zardonic just kind of blew up out of nowhere. Um, I remember that I think
Yeah.
he was even DJing at a UFC event at one point, which was kind of crazy.
I
Um,
believe it. That would
so
be a wild,
yeah,
a wild gig for sure.
he was either DJing at it or he was like presenting music, but I know he was there to say the very least because it's very
Yeah.
hard to miss a guy who's constantly dressed up like a Mortal Kombat character. So
I'm gonna have to ask him about that for
yeah,
sure.
um,
Yeah, but it's funny, like talk about artists blowing up,
yeah,
kind of out of nowhere, but it's always a case where like they've been, you know, years of kind of like simmering before
yeah,
some sort of popping off point. But
exactly. So
but
and
yeah,
that
he's kind of like one of those OG bass music, metal fusion artists,
Yeah.
and he's kind of like, really been kind of one of the the leaders of that sort of fusion of things. So
Yeah.
it's awesome to collaborate with one of the OGs like that.
Yeah. How'd you guys come in contact together then? Like how'd you meet and all that?
It's kind of came about fairly naturally at first. Initially, kind of a more professional relationship. I had this awesome neuro drum and bass artist, Sinister Souls, remix a collab with Biomechanical Waves, um, and yeah, that actually a lot of these sort of professional relationships turn into appreciating each other like personally and working together. Because I hired Sinister Souls for this remix, and then we wound up doing a collab together that's
Mm-hmm.
on the album. And kind of similarly, I sent that tune to Zardonic for consideration for his playlist because he curates this amazing metal drum and bass playlist on Spotify. So check it out. It's called Metal and Bass, I think. But yeah, sent him the tune and he really liked it. And we got to talking about mastering work because he does a lot of that as well. And drum and bass is an incredibly difficult uh, style to get right. It's like, it's, very high production standards. And if things aren't produced in such a way, then it kind of falls flat by the genre standards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've reviewed some drum and bass here and there, and there's two ways I go are two types I've noticed. It's either that it all sounds the same, which isn't a stab at the genre, but there's some producers who just don't know what they're doing, and it just sounds extremely similar to so many other drum and bass artists, or they fuse it so well with other genres that it sounds amazing. I forget who I just reviewed, but they were doing a lot of that fusion, and I gave like the album 8 or an 8.5, and I think that's when I was doing my the review everything thing where we reviewed
Oh,
like
yeah.
200 albums in like 4 weeks or something. So
Yeah. You mean they like did a general genre fusion or specifically drum and bass with other things?
they did drum and bass with other things. Like drum and bass was the foundation, and
Yeah.
then they added onto it like industrial and ambient and atmospheric shit, and it was just beautiful. And it's annoying me that I can't remember who it was because I have it on my Bandcamp wish list right now. So
Well, I'm gonna hassle you afterwards to tell me who it was because I'm always on the lookout for artists doing this sort of thing
yeah.
because there aren't a lot of us, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm gonna pop up my
Um,
phone right now and see if I can't find them. So
yeah, because like the metal drum and bass fusion is kind of an obvious marriage of things, but there aren't many artists that I know of doing it.
hmm
Um, and I think Zardonic is one of the OGs of that sort of fusion, so he's really supportive of people that do that because there aren't a ton of us that I'm
yeah.
aware of. So he's been awesome to work with. Like, he wants to foster that particular niche.
hmm
So like, he did some remix work for me and some mastering work on my first EP, and he remixed New Blood, which did super well. Um, and yeah, it started with him doing mastering work and remixed a couple of my tunes, and eventually, sent him a vocal demo I was working on, and we turned it into a proper collaboration for his album, just because our styles just obviously blend that well.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, I've always liked his work, so I could see how that could work well together. I mean, I haven't listened to the single yet, but I'm going to after the interview now. So I got a few chores I got to do around the house so that I can blast that too. Um,
yeah,
anyway,
I think you'll do your chores twice as fast listening to that tune, I'm sure.
it's funny too because the one day I always, whenever I go food shopping in the morning, I have my earbuds in and I just walk around the store and I get what I need. And the one day, my neighbor, who I'm friends with, he was there as well, and he tried saying hi to me, but because I was listening to whatever, he said like he described it that I looked like I was blasting metal. I looked pissed off, and I was just like throwing shit in my cart like hard, and I was just like, dude, I was just walking. I was nice and peaceful. so,
Yeah.
so maybe that happens. So. The band that I was talking about earlier, though, they are called The Blood of Heroes. So,
Nice.
yeah, if you
I'll
haven't
have to
listened,
check it out.
yeah, I'm trying to remember who they're on, but I think it was on some sort of label. Ohm Resistance, that's what they're on. If you've heard of that label before, but um,
I don't think I know that one.
yeah,
I'll have to check it out.
yeah, I can send you a link too later on. Okay, you got some live shows coming up, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, you got are you at the next Resistance Festival, or did you
No,
already play it?
we just played the one this past April.
Okay,
Um, actually did like 5 appearances throughout the festival, which is ridiculous.
seriously. Well, that's because you're a part
um,
of a lot of projects too, right?
is the main guy for Biomechanical, Matt. You
Yeah.
know, he plays guitar for Mechanical Vein, and I play in Biomechanical as well.
Hmm.
So both our projects played Resistance. We both collaborated with Morris Black a bunch, and we've did some vocals during his set, and we did this like back to back to back DJ set with
Yeah.
Morris Black and Biomechanical Matt and myself. So it was like 4 appearances for both of us, plus and another little like guest vocal thing with Dance Floor Gladiators. It was the most ridiculous festival weekend of appearances to
Hmm.
try to manage while being sick as hell as well.
So it
Um,
really wiped you out, huh?
just a little bit, but it was an amazing time. These yeah, Resistance Festival is amazing, and they always curate awesome lineups, and yeah, just awesome people there. Really good vibes. But yeah, it's been a great bunch of shows recently. Played in Helsinki Festival in Finland last year, and then a one-off with Aesthetic Perfection in April. A few U.S. shows, mix of like headlining and also joining the Morris Black, Danny Blue, Eva X tour for a few dates.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's been awesome. Taking all of these new album tunes and doing them properly live and uh, yeah, don't have a lot booked the rest of this year, but we just locked down one in the Netherlands for November, which is getting announced this week. And that one's really cool because that's a drum and bass event, but it's specifically a live oriented one where they're getting some like, yeah, drum and bass acts with live instrumentation, which is, you know, why they booked me over there because that's kind of my thing.
And speaking of live performances, you have a custom instrument. And I know we're friends on Facebook and all that, but I've never seen it myself, I don't think, or I saw it in passing. Tell us a bit
Yeah.
about that instrument.
It's I call it the Electroax. It's basically a guitar-mounted MIDI controller.
Hmm.
So I took a bass guitar and gutted it and put this kind of flashy, like light-up MIDI controller in it, with some extra LED lights and EL wire strings. So it's this kind of like big glowing behemoth of a thing. Um, and yeah, there's like kind of interactive lighting feedback when you trigger the buttons and things. And it looks very cool. People always get quite hyped about it. But just I've always wanted to do more with performing electronic music than just being the guy behind a table of you know
Yeah.
synths or whatever. And also like doing this sort of modern bass music inspired stuff. There's a lot of sound design to it, so there's no way you can ever like almost any sound on the album cannot just be played on a keyboard with a preset
Hmm.
because there's tons of sound design into everything. So yeah, basically, finish the tracks and then I chop up the key parts and sample trigger them on this custom instrument. It's largely inspired by the Glitch Mob, actually.
Hmm.
So I've always really loved their work. It's amazing. And one of their live setups called the Blade. It's like this big stage thing, and they have it's 3 guys and they have touch screens facing the audience, and they would do a similar thing where they trigger the samples on these touch screens and it would kind of like light up the zones they're playing and everything,
That's pretty
and it just
dope.
gives a lot of like visual feedback to what's actually being played. So it's trying to do something similar in that regard where this instrument does do a little splash of light when you press a button. So
Yeah.
yeah, just trying to like create a little more connection with the audience than just you
Yeah,
know
and I
the guy
appreciate
behind the
that.
laptop.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, because as you said, there's a lot of industrial acts who are trying to find their way to, or electronic acts in general, who try to find their way to have more of a stage presence, and they fail at it. But that's an awesome way to do it. That's actually using your brain. Um, I just recently saw, the band Magic Sword. They're kind of in the synthwave department.
I
Um,
know I've heard them. Yes.
Yeah, I found out of them because of a huge gamer, and they were in the Hotline Miami 2 soundtrack, and I found them through that. But anyway, I went to go see them live, and their performance was amazing. They each have like glowing eye bands, like sunglasses, eye bands. I can't really describe it. But then they have the actual magic sword on stage, and they'll pull it out, and they sell like magic swords. So like when they pull theirs out, everybody who bought one brings theirs out. It was a great time and a good show, and they killed it. And
That
everybody.
sounds like a blast.
Yeah, it was great. It was one of the better shows I've been to in a while, and I don't know, it was just cool. So
Is everybody's magic sword like a light up thing or something?
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a light up. Well, obviously they have the original one that actually looks like a cool ass like sword from like Halo
Yeah.
or something. But everybody else just had kind of like a giant glow stick sort of thing, and it was dope, because like when they pulled it out, everybody else did, and they just started waving it around, going crazy.
Yeah. Actually, thought about a similar-ish thing, because part of the live show, I wear this kind of like chest light thing. Vaguely looks like an Iron Man arc reactor kind of thing.
Okay.
The Mechanical Vein has a glowing chest light
Yeah.
thing. I did kind of wonder about like selling a sort of a cheaper version of that as merch, and then people could
Yeah,
wear the chest light at shows. But I don't know.
I think that'd be pretty dope.
Undecided about
Yeah.
actually doing it or not.
I mean, it's gimmicky, but it works at shows. Like, personally speaking, I would never buy something like that. I'm more of like, I'll buy your T-shirt and I'll buy your albums, but like, I don't want a glow stick sort of thing or anything like that. But they sold a lot of those swords at the show, man. There was like, 40 people in the audience with the swords, so there's an
Yeah.
audience for it somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Next thing I want to discuss is your work with Hybrid Black. Obviously, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that you and Biomechanimal were the two who really got behind the label and started pushing it. But tell me the story behind it.
Yeah, it was a little bit before COVID hit, I think, when we started it. Basically, Biomechanimal and I both do this heavily like modern bass music inspired thing. Like he takes a lot of like dubstep influence and such. I take more, like drum and bass, both quite into mid tempo as well. And yeah, just really fusing that with those industrial metal vibes. And as we were working on our material and thinking about like what labels we would pitch it to, we couldn't even really think of any labels we would entrust it to, honestly. It's not shade at scene labels, but like willfully so. Like they're not very interested in, the modern bass music scene, all the stuff that we're just as focused on as we are, the metal and industrial side of it. And it would be kind of like very limiting for us to only put it in sort of a, like goth scene focused label.
Yeah.
There are some others, like Fixed is pretty good about this sort of hybrid thing. They're also incredibly picky with who they work with and such.
I heard good. I heard good and bad things about Fix. Like I like the music that they put out,
Yeah.
but as far as the business side, I heard very mixed things. So
Yeah, I've heard mixed things as well. I can't say much. I did release one remix on Fixed.
Yeah.
I remixed Toronto is Broken, and it came out on their latest Fix sampler, which is cool. Yeah, I love the material they put out, but they're the only label I can think of that I'd really sort of entrust this sort of hybrid thing
Yeah.
to. And instead of just self-releasing, we figured we'd try to like build up an actual label to support a community around this particular fusion of genres. So yeah, you can self-release it without any sort of label entity, but because we're both doing this sort of fusion, and we know a lot of other artists in our circle and beyond our circle that have the same sort of fusion they're really into and have the same sort of issues, not knowing who to kind of trust with it. Built up a label around it. Where we do things a little bit differently. We don't try to sign artists or whatever. I kind of feel like that's antiquated. The wider electronic scene signs releases, not artists, and which makes sense because you can kind of like, sign a track or an EP to a label that it's really well suited for, work with different labels, it's a great way to kind of like promote yourself through multiple
yeah, that's actually
label entities.
that's actually how we work on Brutal Resonance, because we have a small little label, and that's how we work exactly. Because I always tell people who sign onto the label, it's just like, look, we do one album contracts. If you want to stick with us, that's cool. We do a contract per album or EP. But if you get like if one of them for whatever reason got a signing to, like, let's say Metropolis Records or even like Negative Gain, who are bigger than us, I'd be like, go for it, go to them. You know, they can offer
Yeah.
you more opportunities. You know, this is a hobby for me more than anything. I don't make money off this. Well, I do, but it's like in the past 6 months I made $200.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
with that money I bought office supplies. So,
It's yeah, similar thing honestly. Like, because for hybrid black stuff, we don't try typically take like a full like 50% label cut. Usually it's less.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so we'll do like a higher cut for some of the bigger compilations that have much more work behind them.
yeah,
But yeah, generally we do tiny cuts because we're not trying to, um, like take half of the earnings or whatever. And
yeah.
whatever cuts we do have, we generally don't touch it, and it
Mhm.
just gets funneled back into like promotion costs and etc. So it's just
Yeah. We do
yeah,
a flat like 60/40 cut for profits, but the way we also work with that is that I'm just like, look, we're not taking over your Spotify, we're not taking over your YouTube or SoundCloud or whatever you have. We just want Bandcamp, and I always say we want a 3 month exclusivity with that, so 90 days, and as soon as that 90-day period is up, do whatever you want with it. Put it up on
yeah,
Bandcamp. You still could put it up on YouTube and all that. And that's just for Bandcamp. Like if we put it out on Bandcamp, you could put it out the same day on Spotify. And the reason why is
yeah,
because I'm not gonna fight for pennies because that's what Spotify brings in. It's like
yeah. Well,
so.
it's funny because for us it's sort of, at least for me personally, it's kind of the opposite,
Yeah.
which I know is atypical. Like, I make way more from Spotify than Bandcamp, like
Hmm.
not even close. Just because like once you start doing collabs with bigger artists and it
Yeah.
starts hit their algorithms, and once you start hitting lots of Discover Weeklies, et cetera, it can really like build up.
Yes.
But yeah, like you said, like a lot of it can be squibbling over pennies. Is squibbling a word? Uh,
It is now.
okay. But yeah, so it's like we're not very fussy about Bandcamp in particular. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, you can put it on your own, keep it
Hmm.
100%, whatever. It's like just mainly do a chunk of, the non-Bandcamp stuff
Yeah.
because we're not trying to like get rich off of anyone else's
Yeah.
music. We just want to build this community
Hmm.
around this awesome genre fusion that we love.
Yeah, the only reason why I'm fussy over Bandcamp is because we do a lot of physical releases, so and Bandcamp
Yeah.
is where we sell it all. But like, if it wasn't for that, if we were only doing digital releases, I wouldn't even have a record label at this point because I don't want to do just digital.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually like holding stuff, so but digital is the way of the future, so it's also smart to go that route. So, um, but yeah, I think we've talked about plenty here. We talked a bit about your new album. We talked about movies. We talked about VFX. My dog came into the camera a bit and was blurred out, but that's okay.
I didn't even notice, to be honest.
Yeah, I was petting him earlier, but he was like a little blob, like right there. So, but yeah, towards the end of the interview, Keith, I always ask if there's anything else that you want to mention or talk about before we head out.
I think we kind of covered it. Was there anything
Up to
else?
you.
I can't remember. I mean, yeah, we kind of covered it. Like, yeah, appreciate taking the time to chat about all the exciting things happening musically. I should also shout out because I mentioned I'm a member of Biomechanical as well.
Yep.
There's a new Biomechanical single we're dropping in maybe about a month, I think. I'm just finishing some like mix and master stuff on it right now. So I do like a bunch of mix and mastering work on this kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, that's pretty hype. We're Biomechanical's playing with Zardonic in London in November. Um, but yeah, we've got some new music coming for both of those. For Hybrid Black, we're also ramping up on a new compilation, so we're kind of trying to like hunt around for more artists doing the same kind of thing that we're doing. So if there are any other artists out there that are doing that sort of like modern bass music fusion with industrial and metal vibes. Yeah, definitely like hit us up because we're starting to ramp up on our next epic label compilation and hopefully some live events because I think a lot of scenes are experiencing a similar thing where we need some fresh promoters doing some cool things because um, there aren't as many events happening in most markets as there used to be.
Hmm.
So we're trying to like kind of ramp up on doing our own club nights some more, and yeah, hopefully we did one of those a year ago, which was super successful, and hopefully we'll be doing them more regularly soon.
All right. That's about covers it up. We'll leave links to everything Mechanical Vein in the description. And yeah, everybody, as usual, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. I wish you well, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.